You're listening to Inspire Change, a broadcast that strives to educate, motivate, and empower men to challenge traditions of masculinity. To guide us through the intricacies and intersections of emotions, relationships, and male identity is renowned psychologist, author, and speaker Gunter. This is Inspire Change.
Before I begin the actual podcast, I would like to respectfully acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I work. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders past and present. Welcome everybody to another episode of Inspire Change with Gunter. I'm your host. Welcome everybody to a special introduction to our journey into redefining masculinity. As I said in the opening last time, I want to devote this particular number of sessions to really getting into understanding masculinity and all the permutations of it. I'm Gunter, founder of Making Good Men Great, and your host over the next 20 minutes, where we're going to explore why reimagining what it means to be a man in today's world is not just vital, it's imperative. And it's imperative to our growth, relationships, and society at large. Now, before I dive into this, let me make a little bit of an announcement. I just got a list of the countries that we're currently registering in very highly, and it's actually an interesting list. At the top of the tree is Australia, then the United States, Philippines, Colombia, Canada, Guadeloupe and France, New Zealand, Saudi Arabia, Syria, South Africa, and Nigeria. So it's a really, really interesting mix where my podcast is being taken up in. Now, there's a few more, but these are at the top of the current audience. So all of you out there who are tuning in and listening to Inspire Change with me, thank you very much. I hope, very much hope, that you'll become part of this community, because that's what I want to create. I want to create a community of people who are willing to think more deeply into some of the issues that we're currently experiencing in our world, especially about issues such as gender, and possibly also sex and politics and history and anthropology. So one of the things that I often get asked is, why have I chosen fundamentally to dedicate a large part of my career, and it has been very much a large part of my career, to the issue of masculinity? Well, there's a lot of reasons, partly because I'm male and partly because I've got a lot of friends who are male. And I think that given our current mental health and physical health stats, we really deserve more attention than what we're actually really getting. That does not mean women are being overexposed in terms of media and so on. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking fundamentally about a different way to taking a look at this issue about what it is to be a man in today's society. We know what it was decades, centuries, millennia ago. There was a very particular way of viewing people, and all of you know that I throw that perspective into the basket of patriarchy. So, what's the gig? Well, for a start, let's make the assumption that masculinity is not monolithic. It's actually fluid, it's diverse, and it's evolving, and it should evolve. And as we stand at the crossroads of change, redefining masculinity becomes not just a personal journey for us as men, but a collective stride towards a more empathic, understanding, and inclusive world. So why is this redefinition so crucial? Lots of people ask me that. And I want to break it down into a couple of areas. Firstly, on a personal level, it's important that we begin to break free from the confinements of traditional masculinity that allows individuals to explore the full spectrum of human emotions and experiences. That includes things like vulnerability, empathy, and collaboration, where that becomes a strength and is not seen as a weakness. Secondly, I think it's important that we do this in our relationships, be it as partners, friends, or family members. That is to embrace a broader definition of masculinity that fosters deeper connections. After all, as Dr. Mark Williams always says, we are the connected species. But for millennia, we have been dealing with a wedge that's been driven into our relationships. And that wedge is patriarchy. Now, in redefining masculinity, we pave the way for more open communication, for mutual respect, and for genuine support, where we dismantle the barriers that often leave men feeling isolated. Now, third, and this is an important one, at a social level, challenging the old paradigms of masculinity contributes to breaking down systemic inequalities and violence. It encourages us as a culture where everyone, regardless of gender, can thrive without the constraints of rigid roles and expectations. Now, here in Australia, we've been watching, or at least some of us have been watching, an interesting program called Nemesis. Now, Nemesis has been a program screened on the ABC. It's one of our sort of core channels, free-to-air channels. And the program's fundamentally about interviews with Liberal National Party politicians. And it's mainly, so far what I've seen, it's mainly been about the Liberal politicians and the instability in leadership that party brought to the table over a period of time. And one of the things that this program has, even in the first episode, seriously raised into our perspective is that it neatly dissects the patriarchal values that pervade our political system. So far in the program, the thing we've seen is the politicians need to protect their territory, their turf, and to climb the political hierarchy. And therefore, in order to do that, they need to acquire more power. And in order to do that, they need to show how more competitive each of them can be. Now, if that isn't a dysfunctional approach to governing a country, I don't know what is. And not only that, but the way in which they do it has shown itself to be extraordinarily emotionally immature. So, let's take this further. This journey towards redefining masculinity is also not about erasing differences or diminishing what it means to be a man. It's about expanding our understanding, recognizing the richness of masculinity in all its forms. And it doesn't mean the butch, buff bloke on the footy field. It is also about embracing the idea that our strength truly lies in our diversity and capacity for change. In a biological ecosystem, the idea that, the moment it becomes less and less and less and less diverse, the more likely that ecosystem is to collapse. So this is a very, very important aspect. So as we embark on this sort of season of masculinity reimagined, I want to invite you to join us with an open heart and mind. Together, is where we can explore the depth of what it means to be a man today. And that doesn't mean that, women can't step into the conversation. If anything, we should have women step into the conversation. We should have people come from all sorts of backgrounds, sexual orientations, and so on, to step into the conversation about what it means to be a man. We seem to be flooded at the moment with the idea what is it to be a woman? But, we still haven't got really a good handle on what it is to be a man. Now, all of this is there for us to focus on transforming ourselves as individuals and our society into a place wherein everybody can thrive. So let me very quickly throw the door open to the idea of the evolution of masculinity. And as I've said before, masculinity has evolved significantly over centuries, shaped by cultural, social, and economic forces. Now, in traditional societies, some people argue that masculinity was often tied to physical strength, to stoicism, and the role of the provider. But I don't believe necessarily that either the anthropological or the archaeological evidence is there to completely support that. There's lots of evidence, however, that's coming forth showing that those cultures were in fact more egalitarian than what we are. But, that was then. Let's fast forward to today. And in today's culture, the picture is vastly different. And yet stereotypes continue to persist. The idea of the alpha male, Harvard was instrumental about pushing that idea. And as always, they got it wrong. Well, when I say always, they get a lot of stuff wrong. But in this one, they really got it wrong. So why do these stereotypes continue to persist? And more importantly, how does it affect us? And how does it always come down to some idea about competing groups? Now, if I'm going to take a modern perspective on this, we need to go, okay, like, what do I need to understand modern masculinity? And the first thing we need to acknowledge in that space is that it's diverse and it's fluid. There isn't a singular narrative. No matter how much people try to push that number, there is no singular narrative that defines what it is to be a man. And therefore, I talk a lot about the need for inclusivity. If we're going to get to a better place in our evolution, we need to embrace the ideas that were once antithetical to the idea of the man. And that is vulnerability, emotional expression, and the power of collaborative strength. So, yes, part of my mission in a way is to work on the idea of breaking down stereotypes and fundamentally deconstructing patriarchy. It is, as always, in my view, a toxic ideology. And yes, individuals can have ideologies as much as groups. So patriarchy is a fundamental limiter to men's growth and our potential. When we talk about going beyond stereotypes, we're talking about freeing ourselves from limiting beliefs. We need to throw off the shackles of patriarchy, the stereotypes. So consider for a moment the impact of these stereotypes on mental health, on relationships, on personal fulfillment. There is not one day wherein I don't work with an individual in one-to-one sessions on exposing and exploring the ramifications of what these stereotypes have meant to that particular person. And my work is therefore about bringing the person to ask themselves, is this who I truly want to be? And many, 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 many times, most men go, well, not entirely. I'm okay with some of the things, but I'm not okay with the total picture. So, how do we redefine masculinity in a way that serves us better? Well, it starts with self awareness. Now, that self awareness isn't just around our conscious understanding of ourselves, it is also dependent on exploring the unconscious material that rests deep in our psychological basement that we often are not even aware of. So, part of that is the idea that as I'm growing up as a child, where I'm looking at dad, what is it that I'm taking away from my father as a model of masculinity? What is it about his friends? What is it about the community that I live in? Now, we know that that is important because, I'm going to thrive more in a community that's connected. But that community needs to be able to uh, show vulnerability as a strength. It is important that that community fosters empathy and not narcissism. It's not all about one individual or all of us as little individuals in competition with one another. And most importantly, it's about uplifting and supporting each other rather than isolating and dividing. And that is the thing that I see especially prevalent in the political sphere. It's about isolate, divide, and then conquer. So redefining masculinity isn't about discarding the past, but it's about building on it. We need to learn from our history. It's important to recognize that strength comes in many forms. Stoicism, I practice and teach being stoic in certain environments, but not to the deficit of all the other aspects of me as a person. It's also about seeing that courage is not in the absence of fear, but rather courage can only exist in the presence of fear that I am allowed, give myself permission to express, to acknowledge, to validate, and to work towards the resilience to seek the help when I need it, and the wisdom to listen and learn from those who've come before me and those who have other experiences rather than just mine. So let me say that as we wrap up today's episode, I want to deeply, deeply encourage you to reflect on your own perceptions of masculinity. Explore the stereotypes that have influenced you. Explore how you can move beyond them to embrace a more fulfilling expression of your manhood. And that might take time, but that time is well worth it. It's a good investment because the return on your investment is great, not in material ways, but in emotional and social ways. So, to wrap it, next week, I want to explore the pillars of traditional masculinity, and those are two of them, territory and hierarchy, and how these concepts shape our lives and relationships. I talked about nemesis. I might be talking about that again because I think it's actually a really fruitful piece of media that's going to lend itself really well to exploring more deeply. So join me as we continue to challenge, grow, and redefine what it means to be a man in today's society. But also, I want to encourage women to buy into this because we often mirror each other. One of the things that's really, really interesting is when I watch the women in the political sphere, is they're just behaving like the boys. What happened to women bringing their strength, their, value to the table? Have they subsumed them in order to be competitive with the boys, with the men in this patriarchal sphere? Well, if so, that's sad. It's also shame. So, until next time, this is me signing off from Inspire Change. Remember, the journey to redefine masculinity is one we take together. Not one person can do this on their own. There is no hero per se in this. If anything, each of us coming together is the heroic aspect of this. So until next time, stay inspired.
Love to hear from you. And if you're interested, please check out my work on www.gunterswoboda.com or www.goodmengreat.com.
Thank you for listening to Inspire Change, a broadcast that strives to educate, motivate, and empower men to challenge traditions of masculinity. For more information on the Making Good Men Great movement, or for individual or group coaching sessions with Gunter, visit goodmengreat.com. For inquiries regarding broadcast topics or appearing on the show, email Miranda@noirtainment.com. That's Miranda at NOIRTAINMENT.com.